Good morning, everyone, and thank you for attending today's webinar. Today's topic is on Aatrix year-end reporting for Sage 100 Contractor with presenter Steve Kruder from Recording Company. Just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. Everyone is in listen-only mode, so if you have questions, please type them into the questions box on the screen, and we will address them at the end of the session. This webinar will be recorded, and we will email out a copy to everyone along with the presentation later today. I will now turn it over to you, Steve.
Thanks, Krista. So we're going to go over the agenda for today. First, we're going to discuss the supported versions of Sage 100 Contractor for year-end 2017. We're going to discuss the preparation process for before we payroll archive with payroll audits, calculation settings, the ACA setup, Affordable Care Act, and creating backup. We are going to discuss closing and archiving with SQL version 20. So for those who are still in 19, the process is a little different after you've upgraded. We're going to discuss the Aatrix filing for federal and state tax deposits, quarterly reports, the year-end payroll reporting for W-2s and W-3s, your 1099 forms, 1096s, and then after all that, we're going to review additional resources for you if you have any questions after the webinar is over. So the first thing that I want to mention is that version 19 is no longer supported for the current tax year. If you've already received version 20, you may be using the update. If not, you want to use this version as soon as possible. Your consultant can help you with this change, and you want to make sure you upgrade before you start any year-end processes to ensure that your software is current with all the government-required processing and reporting changes. So for those of you that recently upgraded from 19 to 20, the preparation process before you archive your payroll is somewhat similar. 537. The payroll audit, you're going to perform this step the same as you would in version 19, but the fiscal and payroll archiving utility is now database administrator. So you no longer perform this task in Sage 100, you use database administrator to complete that. So these are the steps that consist of the basic housekeeping for your year-end accounting program. First, you want to complete your payroll audit. You want to adjust any calculation settings that need to be adjusted. You want to set up the Affordable Care Act and create any backup before you start any of these processes. Your payroll needs to be archived every year, but your fiscal year can be archived every other year. And once you advance to January, all periods in 2018 become available. So most activities for year-end require exclusive access. You want to make sure that nobody else is entering data as you're completing any of these processes. So the first step for the house cleaning is 537 payroll audit. So if you come into Sage and go into 537, you can complete a payroll audit. Sage will automatically review all of your payroll records, and it'll let you know if you have any audit errors. So I'm using the sample company data. There's no audit errors here, and there's also no quarter number check date mismatches. The only thing that it has to report for me are that I have 24 uncomputed records and 2 unposted records. So hopefully this is a seamless process for you, that you can print out a record or a report that shows all of the records that you need to adjust yourself that Sage can't fix. And you may want to skip this audit button and just go right to the repair button. If you click repair, Sage will perform the same process but fix any smaller errors that it can correct automatically for you. And then anything that it can't fix automatically will show up on that simple report. So that is the first step that you want to complete. The next thing that you want to do is go into 531 payroll calculations and look at this W-2 box in the corner. You need to enter the box number and code for any calculations that you want to include on your W-2 forms. So for example, 401k needs to be included. So this item here has already been entered. It's supposed to show up in box 12 with code D. And you can see that on the PowerPoint. You're all going to get a copy of the PowerPoint after the presentation. But this is a quick cheat sheet for the items that need to go in box 12 and any of the codes that are associated with these items. So you can see that box D, or box 12, code D, is for the 401k. There are other calculations that need to go into box 14. One of these is the union dues calculation. So if you have any union dues, you need to manually enter box 14 here. You need to enter the W-2 code. There are no codes for these box 14 items, so you want to put something that you can use to identify. So we'll just type in union 20 dues here, and the maximum is 8 characters for this. Save that record. There's also a cheat sheet on the PowerPoint for box 14. So these are some of the items: the state disability, union dues, uniform payments, health insurance. You can use this as a reference for box 14 items. So you want to make sure to review all of your payroll calculations and determine anything that needs to be entered in those boxes and correct them. So the next housekeeping item is to set up the Affordable Care Act reporting properly. The Affordable Care Act has been required for a couple of years now for reporting for it. You may want to check with your accountant, your third-party provider, your insurance agent to find out your exact reporting requirements. Sage 100 Contractor can produce all the necessary reports once the setup is completed. So the first thing that you want to do is go into this 521 employees window. So you can select whichever employees you need to complete the reporting for. Go to this ACA tab and enter the information. So it's for year 2017, your work status, full-time, part-time, seasonal. If you enter any of these, it's going to autofill the rest of the year, and then you can change mid-year if someone changes from full-time to part-time. The coverage codes and safe harbor codes, you need to get those from your insurance company. You can ask them and make sure that you get the proper codes to enter in these boxes. And again, you can change these mid-year and they'll autofill for the rest of the year. If you're an employer that provides self-insured coverage, you can add covered individuals down here for spouses and dependents. So you want to make sure to fill in this information for everyone that is required to show up on the reporting. So this is step 1. Step 2 would be to go into the payroll records, and you can review any payroll record where you're entering information in this time card here. And you'll notice that they have this ACA hours box here. So as you're filling out the time card, Sage is automatically going to enter the hours into this ACA box. If the entire pay period falls within 1 calendar month, all of the hours for the pay period are going to be accumulated in this box. If the pay period spans 2 months, the hours for the first month are in this box, and the hours for the second month will be in this box. And again, Sage should do this automatically for you, but if you need to change anything manually or review anything, you can come into the payroll records and edit this at any time. Just catch up in the PowerPoint a little here. So once all those setup items are complete, you may be asking which forms you need to file. So you can use this grid as a helpful guide. Employers with 50 or more full-time employees that are required to offer health insurance coverage and report enrollment information, they need to file the forms 1094 and 1095. If, depending on the amount of employees you have, whether you're self-insured, you can file either the B or C forms. So you can use this chart, or you can go to the irs.gov website and get additional information. And once you are certain of the forms you need to file, you can go into Sage, and the ACA forms are in 543. So I'm just going to enter the calendar year of 2016 because I'm using a sample company, but this is a quick example of the reports that Sage can produce for you once the ACA is set up properly. So once the ACA is set up and all of your housekeeping items are taken care of, you're going to want to make sure that you have a backup of your company files before you complete the payroll archive in case they need to be restored from backup. So when you're setting up your company in database administration, the system automatically prompts you to create a backup schedule for your company. So this should already be happening on your server, and all of the files should be stored in this Sage 100 con folder as the nightly backup. So you should make sure that that process is being completed. And you can also create on-demand backups of your company. At any time, you can come in here, create an on-demand backup, and it'll show up in the same folder in the on-demand folder here, the same Sage 100 con folder in on-demand. So although this is probably being done for you already, you may want to make sure that you move a backup to another folder on your server or put the backup on a flash drive just in case something happens and you need to restore your data from backup. So now we're going to discuss closing and archiving the payroll year. So the first step would be to go to 522, your payroll records window. You want to go to File, Count, and this will tell you the amount of records that you have. So when you complete the payroll archiving process, you want to make sure that this count matches your payroll archive notification once it's complete. So it's just a number to use for reference. For those of you that are in 19 still, this process looks a little different. And like I said, version 19 is no longer supported. For those that recently upgraded from 19 to 20, the screen that you view in Database Administrator as you complete the payroll archive are almost exactly the same. They give you all these options to remove employees, and they give you warnings as you complete the payroll archive and move on to the new year. Just note that you cannot enter 2018 payroll data until you archive 2017. So for those in 20, the process is completed very similarly, like I said. You can come into the archive company data, and you can archive the fiscal year here, but we're not going to discuss that today. We're just going to focus on the payroll data. There's a year-end guide here that you can use, and this will take you to a web link that will take you to the guide. So you want to select the company that you want to archive. So we're going to archive the sample company. You can enter a, whatever name you want, but if you want to keep it simple, this is the sample 2016 payroll archive. And then it's the same screen like you had in version 19. You can choose to remove employees that were laid off or that quit. You can approve each employee's removal as you are completing the archiving process, and then you just create the archive. So I did this ahead of time to save time for us. But once you complete that archive, it's going to create a whole new company for you, a payroll archive company, and that's what we're going to complete our Aatrix processes in. So one thing to note before we discuss that is just that if you go into your employee screen and you look up any of your employees, you'll notice they have all of these payroll records from throughout the year. Once you complete the payroll archive, all this information is going to be gone. And you didn't lose the information. It was just moved to the payroll archive company. So we're going to switch to that company now. and you want to make sure that you have admin rights and exclusive access to complete these processes. So as this loads up, Sage is going to give you a ton of warnings that you're in an archive company, just because any changes that you make in this company need to also be made in the active company after you've completed them here. So it gives you this reminder. It changes the background to red so that you know you're in the archive company, and it'll constantly give you reminders. So now we're going to go over the Aatrix reporting. Aatrix is a third-party program that's provided by Sage and included with your software. You can use it for regular payroll filing, and some of you may already be doing that. If not, you may want to become familiar with it. So all of your payroll filing can be completed in 541. And you get a reminder again. I'm just going to turn this off for the rest of the webinar here. So you can use Aatrix forms to file your federal tax forms like your EFTPS, your weekly report, your quarterly 941 report, your annual 940s, and then your W-2s. So all of the processes for each of these are very similar. As you're using Aatrix, we're going to focus on the W-2 processing right now. So once you run the report, Aatrix is going to start working in the background and pulling your information from Sage. And one thing I just want you to note is that as you're completing this, this is just a quick sample. I know it's an older form. As you're starting this process, Sage is going to, or Aatrix is going to prompt you to complete an automatic update. And this is just because the federal and state forms are constantly getting updated, and they want to make sure that they are filing properly and set up for you the way they need to be. So you want to make sure to complete your automatic updates. You can download the update and complete it at another time if you need to, but automatic update is the easiest option. So I'm going to go back into Sage. And this is just going to take a minute. X out of this, see if Aatrix popped up somewhere else. Okay, so this is the warning that you're going to get. So I'm in year 2016 because I'm using a sample company. They're saying that it's the wrong form. So I'm just going to continue and disregard that warning. And then this is also saying that your W-2 company information, anything that you change in Aatrix is not going to be pushed back into Sage 100. So you need to make sure to mimic any changes that you make in Aatrix in Sage 100. So now this is the first step of the W-2 setup wizard. You can test drive with 25 of your employees. You can test drive with all of your employees. And I think the test drive process is an important process because you can run through the whole setup and see the information that you need to process, gather it, and come back and then process your W-2s and W-3s for real. But you want to complete the test drive first, and that's what we're going to do today. So this information, everything that it's grabbing from here, is being pulled from 7.1, the company information that you've entered in utilities. So before you start this, you may want to make sure that everything that you're entering in here is accurate and up to date. So you can just click next at this step if your EIN is correct. This screen is just saying that if you have multiple payroll files for a company under the same EIN, you can enter yes here, select yes here. We're going to go with no because we're just using the one sample company. All of this information is being pulled in from that 7.1 company information screen. You can change whatever you need to here. But again, keep in mind that anything you change here, you need to change also in Sage. So now this is just asking which type of filer you are, if you're filing for your company or if you're a third party. Now here's all of your state and local tax items. You need to make sure that you have the correct tax account numbers here. I plugged in numbers because we're in the sample company, but Sage will outline these numbers in red and prompt you to fill them in if their formatting is wrong or if anything needs to be corrected. You can also enter any local tax items if you need to here. You can always add those. So now it's just going to ask you a couple more questions. Do you have any employees who are exempt from Medicare or Social Security? Do you want to use control numbers for your W-2s? Do you have employees who have elected to receive the forms electronically? So if any of those apply to you, you can select yes here. And now it's going to ask you to fill in the W-3 information. So I would imagine most of you are probably 941 payers. You can enter an employer type here if any of these apply. If not, you can select not apply. If you have any third-party sick pay, you can check this box off and enter the amount here. If you have a different establishment number or other EINs that have been used, you can enter that information in these boxes, and then you want to check off this box if your business has been terminated this year. So this is just going to take a few minutes to process. It is pulling in all of your information from Sage, and it's going to give you a reminder that you're in test drive mode. So none of this information is going to be saved as you go through. It's just to give you an idea of the info that you need to gather and correct when you process your W-2s. So when you're in Aatrix, any information that's highlighted in blue, that's the information that you need to focus on when you're at this step. So right now you're verifying employee information, and all of this info in blue you need to check and make sure that it's accurate. Once it is, you can go to the next step. Now it's asking you to verify electronic W-2 information. So if anybody's part of the retirement plan, if they get third-party sick pay, you can check off any of these things here. Now it's asking you to verify the Social Security tips. So you can enter any of these amounts here that you need to. I'm not going to do that. Here, it's asking you to verify state wages, so that's the next step. And if you try to move on to the next step and you run into any errors, it's going to bring them up. So this is saying that local wages were found, but no state wages were found. So you can go back and correct, and it highlights the boxes that you need to pay attention to. So these are in blue, and it's this line in yellow. So I'm just going to enter an amount here. And hopefully that fixes the error so we can move on. And the last step is to just verify the unassigned columns. So columns highlighted in blue are the unassigned columns. You can see that the employee 401k, it's box 12D because of how we assigned it in the program. Any of these, you can come in here. You're going to want to review any of these that are highlighted in yellow and enter the correct W-2 information. So for example, we have the union dues that we know are supposed to go in box 14. So we're going to select box 14. And then, like I said, this is as a character limit. So we're going to make this 20 dues and see if that fits. So now that that's been assigned, you don't need to edit that information anymore, but you need to review each of these unassigned columns and assign them if you need them to show up on the W-2. So once that's completed, I'm not going to assign all of these now. I'm just going to move on to the next step without correcting. But you're going to want to review each one of those. And again, I'm going to continue without correcting. So once you've filled that out and you've checked all the information, it's going to give you this quick offer for e-filing services. And you can e-file through here, and here's all the pricing information, but we're just going to print. So we can print the W-2s for the employees and your federal filings. And then it's just another quick offer to complete the e-file service. So you can include divider sheets as you're printing, and it provides information on how to file your forms. I'm not going to do that, but you may want to. Here's all the forms that Aatrix is going to generate for you. So this is just going to take a minute as it's picking up all your records, and I'm going to catch up in the PowerPoint as it does that. So here's all the screens that we filled in and the information that we added in Aatrix. It prompts you to correct all your errors, and now we're caught up. So these are the forms that Aatrix is going to produce for you. And it's still calculating all the fields, so just give it another second. So right now it's generating the employee W-2s. So you can review these at each step and print a copy for your records. So this is the employee copy. I'm just going to skip without printing. And now it's generating the employer W-2 copies. Move on to the next step after you've printed that. And one thing to note is that the IRS does accept the blank white perforated sheets now. So you don't have to have the pre-printed W-2 forms that are in red. You can just get the white sheets and print them out. So this is the 941 federal W-2. I'm not going to print this, just skip on to the next step. 941 federal W-3. And now any notices that you need to include. So we're not going to set up the Efile, but that's the test drive process. So now that's the test drive process for the W-2. So I suggest that everybody completes that process, and that'll give you an idea of the information that you need to gather once you actually file through Aatrix. So the next thing I want to mention is just that you can complete your state filing in 542, and all of the state filing requirements are different. So I'm in Jersey, so they have the 500 monthly, 500 weekly, the 927 and WR30 quarterly, and then this is the weekly pay for weekly payers. New York has different filing requirements, PA, so you just need to be familiar with your state requirements and know that you can come in here and complete everything that you need to in the 542 state tax form window. And all those processes are very similar for the W-2, the 941, and the 940. They're all going to take you through those initial company information screens, and then Sage is going to prompt you to correct information that pertains to each report. So 541, 542, and the 1099s that we are going to review are all done in a similar fashion. So before you start processing your 1099s, these are the reports that you may want to print out to have for reference. So the first one that we are going to review is the 41161 report. And this will give you all of the vendor 1099 amounts for the year. Again, I'm using the old data on the sample company. It'll give you the tax IDs that have been entered and the 1099 tax types. So if you review the sheet and there are any tax IDs that are missing, you can go into the 44 vendors window and make sure to enter the federal ID number and tax 1099 type, and that will show up on the 1099 report if you print that again. So that's the first report that you should print. The next one you want to print is in the same window, 41141, and this is an insurance report that lets you know if any of your vendors have expired certificates. So it gives you the expiration dates. So you can use this as a reference. And if there are any vendors that you want to send letters to notify them that you need updated certificates, you can go to the 416 window, and report 51 is the expired certificate letter. So for every vendor that has expired certificates, it's going to generate a letter that you can just send directly to them and notify them that they need to send you updated certificates. So you want to do all that before you start processing your 1099s. So once you have completed all that and you're ready to process, you can go to 4.5, vendor 1099 forms. And we're going to run through this process quickly. And it's, like I said, very similar to the W-2 process. So it's going to give me the same warning. I'm using old data. This is a 2017 form. I'm just going to disregard that. And it's going to remind you again that any information you put into Aatrix needs to also be changed in Sage. It's not going to push that information back into Sage 100. So we're going to start the test drive process for the 1099. The taxpayer ID is being pulled from the 7.1 window. And this is asking if you have multiple 1099 data files under the same EIN. So if that's the case, you can select yes. And the screen should look familiar to you. This is all the information that it's pulling from your 7.1 utilities window. You want to select that you're filing for your company, or if you're a third-party filer. You want to make sure that your state and local tax items are correct, as you did in the other W-2 window. And then you want to, if any of your recipients elected to receive their forms electronically, you can check that off here. I'm not going to do that today. And then last, they're going to ask if you want recipient identification numbers truncated. So if you do, you can choose the format that you want. And if you want to print ID numbers on recipient copies that are reported as zeros, you can enter that here also. I'm going to leave the default options. So once you get all that information in, it's going to pull all your records from Sage and start generating the required reports. A reminder, you're in test drive mode, and it's a very similar process. So the first step is to verify the recipient taxpayer ID numbers, highlighted in blue. Next step is to check if the federal EIN is checked. So you want to take note of the highlighted boxes there again. Here is the step asks you to verify the recipient names and addresses. So any of this information that's highlighted here, you want to add. And then verify all income boxes. So this only has income in the non-employee compensation column. And now it's asking to confirm that the filing state is correct. The last step is to verify the amount of state income and the state withholdings. So once you run through all these steps, it's going to bring you to the same screen. So you have the offer to e-file with all the pricing information. We're just going to print these out. We're not going to e-file anything. It's going to give you one last chance to select that you want to e-file. And now, if you have multiple states that you need to file in, they'll all show up here, and then you can either check or uncheck the states that you want to file for. I only have one on the sample company. And then again, it's going to ask if you want to include your divider sheets. So if you need information on filing, you can include them. If not, you can just leave it as no. These are the reports that it's going to print. So this is your federal copy, the 1096 summary sheet, federal copy. This is your state copy. Now your recipient 1099s. So again, you can print these out and review and make changes as you need to. The payer copy. This is the 1096 for the state that was selected. And then this is the instruction sheet if you want to print that. So you can set up an e-file account and do all that, or you can, as you're test driving, just print out the information that you need and review and come back and edit. So that's the 1099 process. I'm just going to catch up in the PowerPoint. And remember to set up all your federal IDs and 1099 types in the vendor window. That's an example of an older form, all the steps that we just went through. So once all of this is completed, if you have any more questions, you should definitely do a test drive. But once you've completed your test drive, if you have any more questions, here are a number of resources that you can use. Sage City has a lot of information. I suggest you sign up there. They have a complete section for year-end filing. The knowledge base is a great place for you to type in questions and get answers on specific topics. And then Sage University offers a variety of learning opportunities. They have a lot of instructional videos on various topics that take you through step by step. And then you can always call your Accordant consultant at this number here. If you don't have one, they will assign one for you. So if anybody has any questions, they can type them into the box, and Krista will let me know if there's anything we need to cover.
Okay, we have a few already. So the first question was in the beginning of the presentation, someone wrote, what about salaried employees for ACA hours?
Well, if you need to enter those ACA hours, you can go in and enter them manually in that box. So employees that have the time card field in the payroll records, Sage is going to calculate those, but you can always come back in, and any of these employees that don't have ACA hours, you can manually enter them in the box. So Sage will calculate them from this time card grid, but if you need to change them, you can do that yourself.
Okay, the next question is, where can you double check the file count after archiving payroll?
So I didn't do the complete archive here just because it takes, a few minutes, and I didn't want to wait around while it did it. But once you complete the archive, a window will pop up, and it'll be the same window that we saw on the payroll record count here. So once you archive, it'll say, this number of records has been archived. So you'll complete the archiving process in database admin, and that same window will pop up and give you the number so you can double check, and you can confirm the number there.
Okay, the next question is Aatrix included as an add-on to version 20?
Yeah, Aatrix is included with Sage 100. So you don't have to pay anything additional. It's already built in. And, you can use it for all the year-end processes. You just have to make sure that, and it's on the PowerPoint, you just have to make sure that as you are using it, that you update so that all the forms are correct. I forget which screen I had it on, but you want to make sure to do the automatic, here it is. So as you're using Aatrix in 541, 542, any of those processes that we just reviewed, you want to make sure to complete the automatic updates, because that'll make sure that everything you're filing is correct.
Okay, the next question is the database administrator only accessible from the server? Payroll needs to be archived from the server. Yeah,
so usually when the software gets installed, either by your Accordant consultant or an IT consultant, they'll set up database administrator only on the server, just because they don't want everybody to have access to it. So you may need to work with your IT consultant to get access to it, or they usually set up with somebody, a couple of employees with remote access. So if you're not familiar with how to access it, you should discuss that with your IT consultant or whoever installed Sage on your server.
Okay, one more question. Did you say that the payroll archive for version 20 is in the database administrator or just the final year archive?
Both are in database administrator. So when you come in here, in version 19, you used to archive in the actual program. So I was trying to let those that jumped from 19 to 20 this year that you're going to have to complete this process in database administration. So you come to archive company data, and you can archive the fiscal year here. This has to be done every 2 years. The payroll data has to be done every year. And it's not going to let you process payroll in a new year until you complete the archiving process. And then you just want to make sure that once you do that, that you come to the archive company to complete your Aatrix forms, because all of your payroll information will have gotten moved out of your active company.
Okay, just confirming, I can do a trial for the W-2s, print out the W-2s, and make all corrections at this point.
Yep. Yeah, you can print out the W-2. So that's why I recommend the test drive. So if you go into 541 and you're selecting any of these forms, W-2s, 940, 941, they're going to give you the option to complete the test drive before you actually process them and potentially e-file them. So you're going to want to complete the test drive, print out all the forms, and then review them and make any corrections when you're completing your finalized W-2s and W-3s.
Okay, to clarify, I do need to update to version 20 before year end, correct?
Yes. So if you want to complete any of these processes in Sage, you need to update to version 20, because 19 is no longer supported. All of these forms and rates that Sage and Aatrix automatically update are not being updated in 19 anymore. So you need to upgrade to 20 before you start any of these processes.
Any chance Sage will change that back? Some of us are cloud servers from hosting companies, and their year-end schedules don't always mesh with ours.
No, I don't think that there's I don't think that Sage is going to change that. They're not supporting version 19 anymore. So any of you that need to upgrade to version 20, you can contact Sage, or you can contact an Accordant consultant, and they'll help you complete that process. It's not as difficult as you would think. There's a tool to upgrade from 19 built right into this database administration. So it takes a little bit of time, and you need to be on version 19.8. So if any of you are on 19.7 or an older version of 19, you need to upgrade to 19.8 first. But you should definitely do this before year end if you plan on completing any of the year end processes in Sage through Aatrix.
Okay, next question. Do we need to buy the W-2 forms, or can we just print on plain paper?
You can print on white perforated sheets. You don't need to buy the pre-printed red background sheets for the W-2s, W-3s that you had to in years past. You can just buy the white perforated sheets. They're acceptable now.
Okay, one more question. Once the payroll data has been archived, can payroll be processed for 2018 prior to completing the balance of the reporting?
Yes. So you can't complete any payroll processes in the next year until the year that your previous year has been archived. But once you archive, that's when you can, it clears out all of your payroll data, and you can start processing payroll in the new year.
Okay. There's one more. There was a question before about if Sage would change that, and I guess she wasn't asking about the upgrade. I wasn't asking about the upgrade so much as the archiving process. We need to be able to process our payroll, but if my IT hosting company can't get it archived in time, I'm left hanging.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so unfortunately, you will have to archive your payroll. So somebody, if you've been using the software for, a number of years, maybe you want to see who has been in charge of that process in years past, but somebody needs to have access to database administrator, and you need to archive your payroll yearly. So fiscal, you can do every other year, but your payroll archiving has to be done every year.
Okay, another question. You mentioned a consultant. How do we get a consultant?
You can call this number here for an Accordant consultant, and Also, you're all going to be getting a copy of the PowerPoint and a recording of the webinar. So once you get that information, I believe Krista's going to send that out to you. You can always send her an email, and we can assign a consultant for you.
Can I access the database administration screen from version 19?
Database administration screen is only for version 20. So they moved a lot of the year-end processes and general company information processes into that. So you use it to create companies, you use it to create backups, to restore backups, and for your payroll and fiscal archiving. So it's only for version 20. Anybody in version 19, all of that is built into version 19 of Sage 100.
Okay, great. It looks like that's all the questions we have for today. So we want to thank everyone for attending today's webinar. Again, we will be emailing out the presentation to you later today, as well as the recording. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact us at any time. Have a great day, everyone. Thanks, Steve.